Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Welcome to today's Inspire Me lecture. I'm Melissa Willis, Head of Student Communications here at UWI. Our speaker today is Tom Woollard, who will talk about startup life. Tom studied economics at UWI. This is his 3-year story from starting Bunk at UWI to being valued over £7 million in 2020. Bunk was formed by a bunch of students while at university, and Tom will talk about how they came up with the idea, raised their initial investment, and grew to be one of the most promising startups across the country, all with his closest friends. We'll be recording this lecture, so it'll be available in our speaker library. I'm delighted to pass over to Rob.
Thanks for that, Alicia. Well, nice to meet you all. I'm Tom Woollard, say 26, and I'm a recent economics graduate. I have to say I was a bit surprised when they asked me to do one of the talks for the Inspire Me series. Well, why in short? I didn't think I was that inspiring. I also have no clue why they trusted me to deliver such a mature talk. I'm literally going to use a poo emoji in my first slide. Look, if I take you back a bit, my mum would always say I'm opinionated, argumentative, and need to think before I speak. Luckily, she's not based in Bristol, and hopefully she will never see me try and do this presentation. But today I'll talk you through a little bit about my journey from sort of idea to where we are today. In reality, no one wants to hear me talk about the last 4 years of my life, so I've sort of pulled together some of the highlights to talk through with you all. So I told you I was going to start with a poo emoji, and I'll sort of take you back and set the scene a little bit. Well, look, everyone has a nightmare story to do with renting, and if not directly themselves, they know somebody that does. Now, whether or not that's getting ripped off as a tenant by dodgy agents trying to charge, stupid hidden fees and taking your deposit, or whether or not that's a landlord getting ripped off by a, poor yet ridiculously expensive process. So why do I personally have a sort of disdain for agents? Well, they tried to steal my whole deposit at university. Now I'm not, some rich git who has a personal deposit of £3,000. There was 5 of us living in a house. The problem is it was a classic rundown student digs. There were marks all over the walls, holes on the carpets, and a lingering smell of smoke. I mean, no, the smoke was the letting agent smoking a bloody cigarette whilst showing us around the property. So to give you a better picture, this place was on Park Street, like 3 doors up from Agora. So I had the wonderful sounds of drum and bass in my ears for the early hours in the morning, which just stopped before I woke up for my internship at 6 a.m. I make it sound all sort of, down and gloomy, but in reality, we had lacrosse socials at my place every single Wednesday. So I was self-inflicting quite a lot of my pain. Getting back on track, I couldn't quite believe they were trying to take my whole deposit. I was pissed off, angry, and wanted to do something about it. Like my mum said, I'm argumentative and opinionated. So what does an opinionated and argumentative student do with way too much time on their hands? Well, I wrote them a 2,000-word email/essay outlining why all of their charges were bogus, except for the table which got smashed up in one of those lacrosse prees. So I referred all of my issues in this email back to the Rent Act of 1977, which between us I still haven't read yet, but I think I put in enough legal jargon to really get their attention. So they came back to me saying they've passed my concerns on to their legal team and will come back to me shortly. I mean, what a win initially. First of all, they were trying to take all my money, so I sufficiently went back to them, wasting a hell of a lot of their time and costing them additional legal fees. Ultimately, the lawyers must have been sort of given a heads up by my mum on my argumentative skills, as they backed down pretty quickly, came back and reduced the charges. That one email saved us £2,750. The only thing we paid for was that broken table. So I guess that really got me thinking, how is the rental market so broken? I physically just couldn't understand how we built, these great technological solutions for so many little aspects in our lives, yet there was nothing there for renting. The 2 weeks of holiday we go away on a year are covered by Airbnb, but who's there to help the 50 weeks that we're actually going through the property that we're living in? The leading cause of stress and anxiety for those under 30, it was a market that really needed some attention. So that's when I started really looking at what these sort of, I guess, successful tech companies really did, and how they've taken these, I guess, painful, arduous processes filled with all these various micro tasks and just broken them down into very simple to use technology. It's much more complex than that, but it's all about creating the perfect user experience going through this sort of journey. Now, with 16,500 different letting agents operating around the UK, all acting as middlemen in this sector, and with over £5 billion spent in just the UK market alone, with absolutely no trust between a landlord and their renter, the long-term rental market is ultimately ripe for disruption. So I visioned this sort of huge ecosystem where everything to do with you and your home was taken care of. No more shitty paperwork, no more going in and out of your letting agency branches, but instead replaced with a fully digital journey where you, the renter, is put in control. You can search, sign, and secure your next home, and even sort out all your bills with a tap of a button. To take that a step further, we were envisioning this world where you even could order a dry cleaning service or a concierge to go out and get you some food 24/7 from the local shop. It was a fantastic idea. We were sat there, but ultimately I think there was probably one quite big problem I had with all of this. I had no clue how to code. And it turns out it was a pretty big problem because there was no way I could turn my idea into reality without being able to code. Everything I was looking at designing and envisioning was a tech startup, and I didn't have the ability to build technology. But luckily I had just the right person in mind. So yes, I'm showing you a photo of me on a walk at probably about 10 or 12 years old with Harry. Harry's one of my closest childhood friends, an absolute sort of, I guess you could call him a nerd, but he's not just a nerd. He had started teaching himself coding in his spare time and then went on to one of these professional boot camps. And if any of you are interested in these sort of boot camps, there are some fantastic courses out there that will ultimately turn you into a professional coder in 3 months. Harry went through it and then taught the next cohort, and off the back of that came and joined us. And we've hired people through these courses since, so they are really a fantastic resource if that's a career you're looking at getting into. So together with Harry and Jack, my best mate at uni, who was the one that we ultimately were dissecting Uber's business model in a club at 3 a.m, Bunk was born. So ultimately we're in a position where we had someone who just about had the, I guess, core foundations being able to code. We had all the ideas in the world, but these were all pretty expensive ideas. So I guess came along the next problem. We needed cash. We were all about to graduate from university, needed to get jobs, and had absolutely no money to start Bunk with. During this time, we didn't even really have the money to stay in Bristol. But we knew that with Jack going back to Plymouth, Harry going up to London, and me, well, I didn't really know what I was going to do at this stage. But if we'd all gone off in our separate ways, there's no way Bunk would have got off the ground. So luckily, through some grit and networking and leaning on a lot of friends and good Samaritans, we were sort of sofa surfed across sort of 2-3 months in Bristol, staying in various locations, jumping from weeks at 3 days at a friend onto 3 days at a friend. The problem is, the more and more time we spent working on Bunk, the more we realized that we didn't need a little bit of money, but ultimately we needed a huge amount of money. If we were going to be able to take this seriously, then we had to be working on it full time. And in order to be able to work on it full time, we had to be able to pay our own bills to be able to actually commit to the business. We also needed to be able to afford to bring on a couple of other people working with us, as we had quite a large ambition to disrupt a multi-billion-pound industry. Turns out just 3 people, it's quite a struggle to do all the work that needs to be done. So when you start calculating, the few small salaries to get things going, the equipment, the software costs, the licensing fees, and so on, it really starts adding up. And I think before we realised, we needed in excess of £100,000 just to be able to get Bunk off the ground. Luckily, we had a fantastic mentor in London who was sort of mentoring myself and Jack throughout our final year at university. And as we were graduating, we managed to secure a couple of investment meetings up in London. Now, they started going quite well. We had a few firms that we were meeting with, sort of follow-up meetings. And then luckily, we sort of struck gold. We had an offer on the table for £150,000. And, when I look back at this, it still doesn't sort of seem real. I guess this was the real moment that changed all of our lives, and made the journey that we were about to go on possible. And after almost a sort of year of iterating, working on the idea, the market, the business plan, we finally had an investor that wanted to back us and bring Bunk to life. I couldn't have been more ecstatic. Then I checked the mail, and to my excitement, I think we had our first ever bit of mail to Bunk App Limited. I probably felt like a child when they get their first bit of mail through the post. Receiving your first bit of letter, I sat down to open it up, but I was in for quite a surprise. Now, the same day we received that offer for investment, we had a global organization try to shut us down. So it was a legal letter from a foreign bank informing us that unless we removed any copyright requests for Bunk, they would set their army of lawyers on us. Now, I guess I didn't know what to think at the time, but I just remember walking around that room I was borrowing in Bristol, swearing a lot, called up Jack and Harry and said, what the hell do we do? Do I call the investor back? They've just committed the funds. They're literally sending it to us tomorrow morning. And then I've opened this mail in the post an hour later. And I just remember, sat there thinking, what do we do? Do we wait 24 hours and then give him a call back? And very quickly we realized we couldn't do that. He had taken an absolute leap of faith to back us. And we knew the only way that we could ever run this business is in a, I guess, transparent manner. And we just, accepted to go into a marriage with him. It's not a short-term relationship when you raise money. You're going in with these people to go on a journey with them until the end. So ultimately, I called him straight back and explained the situation. And I just remember sitting there on the call for probably what felt like an eternity of just silence, waiting to hear what he was going to say. Is he going to pull all the investment and run away? I had no idea. Although I will never forget the words he said to me. I know Bink Bank, let's take those fuckers down. What a legend. He told me not to worry, forward all the legal paperwork to him and his team. And from that moment onwards, I never heard from Bink Bank again. So I think when you sort of, I guess, reflect on that whole scenario, it was definitely the right thing to do at the time. And it definitely set us up for not just the right relationship, for the right way of running this business moving forward. He transferred the money the next day, and then we were on the sort of, I guess, the starting stages of our journey. So we were in a position where we had some money now, we had some people, but we had zero products. We had a business plan and we had some eager minds together. And I was lucky enough to fall across Launchbase. This is, I think, just as I was sort of sitting my final exams, I think coming out of the cafeteria at UE, look up and they've got one of these posters on the side. Got a business you'd like to launch, come have a chat with us. And it was almost like fate that I'd just raised money for a business. So I was lucky to fall across Launchbase, headed up by Mark and Kim, as you can see there. And Launchbase was ultimately a newly launched UE-backed startup accelerator, based in the robotics lab on campus. And they were encouraging people to, start their new business if they've got an idea, an entrepreneurialism sort of venture. And they were going to provide you with free office space, mentoring, and almost give you that sort of, I guess, space to get everything off the ground from day one. So that's exactly what they did with us. They helped us, they nurtured us and provided us with that office space. So I spent 4 years up at the university, and then I spent another 1.5 years at the robotics lab building my business. But yeah, so we spent 18 months in there, which was fantastic, not having to sort of, one, pay for that space, but two, the mentorship and the professionalism around there. You were learning from people who'd been there and done it. Mark, for instance, he'd been there, he's raised millions of pounds for previous startups, including very early stage companies raising millions of pounds before they've even taken their first penny of revenue. So it gave us that space to really build our first version of Bunk, test it with the market, get some really good feedback to then be sort of growing out that team and vision. And in the process, we ended up sort of raising some more follow-on investment, which allowed us to scale our operations, bring in a couple of more developers and start really building Bunk out. So I guess, what is Bunk? Ultimately, this is a video we made a couple of years ago now. I'm just going to show you that I think explains a little bit of what we do. That was I guess, gives us sort of a synopsis as to what we're building in the background. We spent a lot of time building since. Let me just jump onto that next slide. So then you realise everything starts to evolve, and I guess the next couple of slides I'll talk to you about, I guess, how you start somewhere small, and I guess that idea starts iterating. But ultimately, you've got to stay very resilient and have a huge amount of passion towards that goal. Things will start to improve, things will start to iterate, and things will start to get better. So this is ultimately a bit of an evolution of our logo. This was one of the journeys we went on in that sort of first year when we were just really working on our brand. And you can see from the disgusting left-hand side of all the mixture of various logos we were working on, and that's not even, a third of them. All these iterations, the couple in the middle that we ended up working in and around for a few months and editing our brand in line. And then the final logo that we ended up sort of settling on. And ultimately you can see that transformation they've gone on and the sort of clarity of our brand that we're trying to get across throughout, always trying to keep it relevant to some sort of property or connotation, so that instantly people will recognize our brand with what we do. And I guess one of the other things to lean on is using your resources. Like, this was in the early days when there was only 3 of us, but we had about, I don't know, 15 people working on the business because we had so many sort of friends that were talented to be able to add value in different areas. Like, for instance, all these logos were actually done by my sister, which is, she's a pretty talented graphic designer. And she went on that journey with us right at the beginning and did some of our initial designs before going back to, finish off her university degree. The next stage is looking at that product. Ultimately, this sort of slide shows the steps we go through when building out an app. It's always fun getting everyone together in front of that whiteboard and mapping out everything we do and want to see on a page, and then putting that into a nice bit of sort of, I guess, paper to be mapping out exactly the integral steps that you have to go through to be able to go from one stage to another. Then you can end up doing some hand-drawn mock-ups, or if we've got a good graphic designer on InDesign, they can sort of put some loose basic wireframes together. And then you get to that end result when you've got your coders and you've got your whole team involved. And the end result is, I would say normally, but for us pretty much always, vastly different to what you've set out to achieve in the first place. Hopefully it's kept all the core elements. It does everything you want it to do, and it's incredibly easy to use. Again, coming back to it, it's all about that user experience. It's all about building that user journey that's almost self-explanatory, so a user knows exactly where to click to do exactly what they want to do. And ultimately, if you look at that sort of final screen, which is one of our, I think it's our viewings and offers page, you can instantly jump on there, see all the offers you've made on a property, any viewing requests you've made, speak to the landlord, speak to any of your tenant friends that are joining you, and swap over into the management stage of the platform as well. So, I mean, this is always a funny one to sort of discuss, as fundraising is far from straightforward. But I'm really proud that since that first £150,000, we've now raised more than 10 times that figure, with a valuation over 10 times greater than when we started. And I guess through this journey, we've had a complete mixture of experience, from raising £100,000 in under 24 hours, from that first conversation to an investor to the money landing in our bank, to the next scenario of spending 6 months negotiating a deal with a bank like Nationwide. I mean, Nationwide were a fantastic addition. Early last year when Nationwide got involved, it was a fantastic validator for us. They'd analysed over 9,000 startups across the UK before making an investment into Bunk, which is a pretty great accolade for us and our team to have behind us. However, I guess it also meant we need to grow up a bit. We now had a multi-billion-pound organisation sat and observing our board. And I'm glad to say we've, as you can see, we've now closed some additional funding, which means Bunk will only grow from strength to strength in the coming years. I think, all of this is underpinned by the most important thing across the whole of your organisation. Your greatest asset will always be your team. You know, I started at Bunk with some very, very close friends of mine, and you know, we've had plenty of ups and downs during that period. It's intense, it's hard work, and you're gonna have spats at each other at times, but we're all so close, we'll always pull through. You know, we've had plenty of new friends join and come join our journey, and we've had old friends leave, but Bunk will always be a family. And if you've ever sort of, you know, been involved with Bunk, anyone involved with Bunk, they'll be very aware of that. But you know, we've got to spend, you know, 10, 12 hours a day working together. And therefore, you know, what I'm happy and proud about is the fact that we get to the end of the day and we still want to be out drinking together. I guess this comes on to the fact that a lot of people say don't do business with friends. I think they're inherently wrong. You know, the fact that I get to call up my best friends when we have some good news is insane. You know, they are the exact people I want to talk to about it, and they actually understand because they're living and breathing it with me. They're not just taking that call and saying, yeah, no, I'm really happy for you. So there is no one else on this planet I think I'd rather work with or work for, or that I would work harder for than my best friends, and to sort of achieve this dream together. This is quite a funny slide. My co-founder, Harry, the nerd, put this slide in. I think he's probably taking a dig at me at my now receding hairline. But he's right, you know, the work is endless. I think if anyone was going to stand up here telling you to go start a business and it's going to be easy, they're wrong. If it was easy, everyone would do it, and it doesn't stop. You know, it doesn't go away when you go home, and you really have to sort of build in, I guess, systems to be able to unwind and switch off, which is, you know, I guess I'm lucky that I've got very close friends and family, which make that a bit easier. But ultimately, on top of all of it, you've got to really enjoy what you're doing and who you're doing it with. You know, I think it's been worth every single second starting this business and going on this journey we have done to date. Like I said, it's work hard. It's hard work. You have to work hard, but it's also, you know, playing hard. We're lucky to be able to go out as a group, go-karting, ice skating, bowling, and for plenty of meals here and there. And honestly, I would not change it for the world. I'm incredibly lucky to be going on the journey I'm going on. And I guess the only other thing I've got to say to that is, why not you?
Thank you, Tom. That was fantastic. I think we'll go to questions then.
Okay, I've got one of the questions here. Good video. Well, thanks. Who was your inspiration to choose this pathway? If you're specifically talking about the video, I think it's a combination of, I mean, at the time, again, we're all obsessed with tech companies in our business. So I think we were looking at the way that the likes of Google and Apple do their online advertising and create their videos. Actually, that video was made by another UWE graduate who's a close friend of ours. We're now using him for all of our videos. So that was sort of the inspiration behind that one then. I'm consulting for a UK startup at the moment, trying to launch a two-sided business. How many property agents did you sign up before launching to consumers? Did you start with Bristol as a launch city? How many cities are you in now? Great question. So ultimately, two-sided marketplaces are tough to get off the ground, right? You know, you're selling selling two different products into two different market segments who both want two completely different things. Where we got a bit, I guess, lucky, I guess, tactical in what we were doing in this space is that for us, it's all about really one side of the marketplace. You know, we partner with the likes of Rightmove, Zoopla on the market and all the other leading portals. So we're not looking to change a tenant's, you know, user behavior. You know, you're not going to search on Bunk when you're looking for a property naturally. You're going to go to Rightmove because it's got one of the strongest domains in the whole of the country. So for us, it was all about really working with businesses and landlords to build the supply side of the platform, knowing that we could bring in that tenant demand into the company. And just to finish that off, since we launched last year, we're now operating nationwide. Have you thought about the implementation of people that may be looking for accessible properties such as wheelchair users? Yes, this is actually really interesting, something that we've spent a bit more time looking at the back end of last year. We want to sort of bring into the platform a bit more this year. But ultimately, it's all of those search features to make sure that you can really look for the property that suits you. And to take that step further, it's not just the accessibility within a property, but also looking at our whole website and brand to make sure that it's accessible for, you know, people that may be colorblind or anyone that has sort of, you know, hearing or visual problems that we can help. Sorry, I keep forgetting to delete the questions. When do you know it's the right time to employ new people and grow the business? I think that's a really good question. Basically, when you have zero time to do it yourself anymore, when it becomes completely overloading. I think we've certainly made mistakes in the past, but one thing that we've known that we need to sort of always go back to is the fact that when we're down in the dumps and we're working on something, we need to know exactly how to do that job inside and out before bringing someone in. Otherwise, we have the situation when they come in and all of our team stopping to try and get them skilled up, instead of one of us that actually has been there and done it being able to take them through. So I wouldn't say there's a sort of golden answer to when to hire someone, but I think you'll know the time. If you've got the money in the bank, if you're really struggling and you're being inundated with inquiries, or you've got a situation where you need to be building out a new product and you don't have the developers or your roadmap to be able to suffice it, there are some pretty sort of, I guess, glaring moments that you realize you just need more people. What sort of hours do we work? I mean, it's a funny one. So we're in the office probably 8:30 till 7 o'clock every day, but we're working around that. We take our work into the evenings. We're working throughout the evenings. Even if you've got TV on, you'll be on emails. You'll be chatting to each other on our Slack, which is the communication platform we use, and just moving things forward. I think that's one of the biggest things about starting your own company, is that ultimately it's never going to be a 9-to-5 job. You mentioned coding boot camps. Any names to share with us? I can follow up the university with a few, but there's one really, really good one up in London called General Assembly. That's one that Harry went through, and it's a very, very well-renowned course. But then there are lots of new ones that are opening up left, right, and centre. So there's actually one in Bristol. The name has just jumped away from me, which they won't like me for because we hired someone off the back of it. Started by a company called Opus, which is a recruitment agency, and they've now set up this subject. It's called Knology. So if you look up Knology around Bristol, they do a coding boot camp, and it's 3 months, and they really try and get businesses in with them so that you're building on really practical sort of user cases. And off the back of that, we've actually hired someone off the Knology course a couple of months ago. Did you build your business alongside your degree, or were you graduated before you started working on Bunk? Funnily enough, I actually registered the business, I remember the date, August the 2nd, 2016. It was when I was on my placement year working in the year out of university, but it was that year I got ripped off by letting agents. So I went through that process. I spent a couple of months looking at it. We registered a business, and then we spent pretty much the whole of our final year slowly moving it forward. We were building out a business plan. We were talking to as many people as possible, and we were lucky enough to get a mentor up in London who was sort of pushing us, I guess, in the right direction, to be able to do what we needed to do to be able to get it going. The Coding Academy. Sorry, someone's just sharing the link to General Assembly. Definitely go check it out. Where do I go to help design a label? Interesting. Is that you wanting to design a startup's logo, or is that you want a logo designed? Ultimately, there are sites like Fiverr. I never had any good luck off it, but I would say if you're looking to get one designed, go to digital marketing or go to graphic design at UE. There's some really, really talented people there that can help you out. Half of our team, went to UE, and the other half went to various different universities, and some didn't go to university. But ultimately, we've backed a lot of young people who were inexperienced, because it's just all about, I guess, potential and not about what they've done to date. How long does it take for your business to get off the ground after investment? I mean, really good question. Personally, I would say our business is, just in the position of taking it at the moment. We've spent the last 2-3 years laying down these foundations. It takes time. You're never going to get there straight away. Something like Uber, I think Uber started in 2008. We're now in 2020, 12 years they've gone on that journey. And Uber actually haven't made a penny profit at all to date, which is an interesting one. But, it's all about, I think, when you start when other people start recognizing your brand and see what you're doing and sort of mentioning it to you, that's certainly some, a moment that sort of comes back to remember. How do you turn an idea/plan into something you seriously consider? I've had several hopeful plans for something, but in the end, I've never seriously worked for it. whether that's because I couldn't get the people I shared the idea with to take it seriously, or because my parents and people I respect dissuaded me from pursuing it due to being a lower priority than university. I mean, really good question. Networking is the best thing you can do. Look, I'm more than happy to give up my time. If people want to sort of get in contact with the university and get in touch with me, I'm more than happy to meet people for 15 minutes, half an hour here and there, and just talk about what you guys are doing and what you're looking at doing. But the best thing for me that you can do is speak to other people. Speak to as many people as possible to find out if it's got legs. You don't want to be spending 3-4 years working on something that you're not going to be able to get off the ground. But if you've really got that vision, you can, I guess, visualize the world where your product is everywhere. And it's something that is a real problem you're solving. And I think that's the other thing, is people look for solutions. I'm all about problems. You want to solve a real problem as opposed to design a solution for something that doesn't necessarily have a big problem. How do you stay resilient when faced with setbacks? Friends, family, network, people around you. It is tough at times, and I'll talk about raising this money, but I haven't put a slide up with how many no's we got on our journey to get there. You're going to get 90 no's before you get a yes, and I think that's just something you've got to get used to. You've got to get used to rejection and feedback and building up that resilience. It only makes you stronger, and therefore go on a better journey. How's the UK doing in its startup industry compared to other countries currently? I mean, the UK is like a global leader with certain startups, like fintech, for instance. We are an absolute global leader in and around. It's something the government wants to be, pursuing massively. And then the other side of things. So the difference in the UK and, for instance, US market, which is the most probably comparable. UK investors will look at a company like ours and they'll say your valuation's way too high. It's still really risky. If I went out to San Francisco, we'd probably have investors being like, you should be raising 20 million pounds. You're worth 100 million. It's a different market, right? They're willing to take much more risk and just chuck money at a problem, whereas the UK is much more about, I guess, proving those traction and proof points on your journey to be able to unlock that next stage. So I think, the difference is you probably see less startups fail in the UK, but less explosive startups as a result. How to get involved with Nationwide? Funnily enough, that was an absolute coincidence. We were at a landlord convention, putting on a stall, talking about Bunk. And again, it was in that first year where we were just gaining user feedback. We had a very good idea of what we were about to release, and we wanted to know how receptive it would be in the market. We had one landlord come over and start grilling us for about half an hour, and we thought, you're asking some really integral questions here. And it turns out he sort of, at the end of it, invited us to come meet their venture team, and he was a director over at Nationwide, and sort of headed up one of their teams over there, and thought it was a great idea to bring in. We went through sort of, I guess, 20 stages of pitching, meetings, iterations, lawyers with them, and off the back of it, they came and joined us on our journey. What's it like working with friends? Do you ever fall out over business decisions? Yeah, I mean, to be honest though, when I really think about it, we haven't fallen out that much over business decisions, because we're working together towards a common goal. So there's never really been a time where one of us is saying this is what we have to do, or if there is, generally everyone else is agreeing with them. If they're saying this is what we have to do and they don't have the ability to be able to communicate and show the team why we want to go on that journey, then they probably wouldn't make that suggestion in the first place. But it's not easy working with friends. There are certainly times we get frustrated, someone's made a mistake, and you can't, it's really hard to talk to friends in the same way as someone you don't know, right? Because you're really thinking about your friendship in the back of your mind. And from one side, people say that's a distraction from business. I disagree. It keeps you human. The amount of, I remember reading a stat when I was at university, but it's something crazy, like 70% of CEOs are psychopaths. And it's more than like even the percentage of a prison population. And when you start breaking that down, I think one of the main reasons behind that is because you really start to lose empathy. But by running a company with my closest friends and even having family involved at times, I think the human element behind Bunk is just always going to be there. And that will hopefully keep me and the whole team grounded as we scale. What's the single most important piece of advice that you can offer for someone wanting to start their own company after university? This is a hard one because I don't want to quote Nike, but just do it. Networking. I think networking is the biggest thing I could advise people to do, because you can literally connect with pretty much anyone on the planet through digital means nowadays. LinkedIn is one of the most powerful tools out there. Whether or not it's connecting with someone else who started a business or an investor out there, but so many people are willing to give you advice. So if you're looking at really seriously starting a business, go online and type in, how to build a startup investment deck. You'll get given a 10-slide suggestions, which is basically like idea, vision, mission, and then dig into the problem, what your business case is, what the solution is, what the market is, what the competition's like, and what your team's like. Put those 10 slides together. Don't worry about it too much. Just bang it together, and then go out there and asking people for advice. Go find out someone who's either started a business or invested into business and say, look, I would just love to buy you a coffee, get some advice for an idea I've got. It might be nothing, but I'd love to know your thoughts. And you'd be surprised how receptive a lot of people are out there of just helping other people that are motivated and want to go on a journey. One of my advices would be never like cold message someone asking for investment. Like if you think, or you connected with someone on LinkedIn or an email introduction to someone that you really even want to raise money from, don't ask them for investment. Always ask to meet them, introduce the company, and get some advice, because that's your opportunity. You're in front of them for half an hour. You sell them the dream, and if they are a serious investor and they like what they're doing, they won't want to miss out. We're lucky enough to have a few of our mentors turn around and want to invest in the business when we didn't think they would be. But that's all come from working with us and actually seeing us develop, as opposed to just going in there and saying, oh, by the way, you're an investor, can you invest? That's just an absolute turn off. No one wants to deal with someone there. How much profit have you made to date, and how's your business still running during the pandemic? We haven't made a profit to date. We probably won't do for another couple of years, and then we should be self-sustaining and growing profitable from our own books. And how's it been running during the pandemic? I mean, it's been a tough year all round. We scaled down our team, is now scaling back up our team. The market completely shut for 3 months, so I couldn't grow the business, and I had to communicate that to shareholders. But I think the real opportunity coming off the back of the pandemic is, look, when you walk down the high street at the moment, all these shops have disappeared over the last 5-10 years. But what's been left beyond the charity shops is letting agents. There's a letting agent or a sales agent every other shop now. What I'm betting my mid-20s on is the fact that in 5 to 10 years time, you'll walk down that high street and they will not be filled with high street letting agents. The whole market will digitize. At the moment, 10% of the professional market is done online. 90% is done, face to face, through high street agents. And when you look at the transformation, and COVID is only going to cause an accelerated digital transformation. So although in the short term we're impacted, in the long term it's going to lead to a market which is so much more digitized than it is now. All these landlords who've had their letting agents physically shut their door for 3 months. We've at least had a platform that's available 24/7 that they can log in, speak to their tenants, move things forward, let out properties. During the peak of COVID, we let out a property in under 2 days without any face-to-face contact, with the landlord getting in touch with us on Saturday and tenants moving in on Monday. So I think technology and the digitization of this space is really the opportunity we have moving forward. What was your degree and what are your main duties in the business? So I studied economics at UWE, and my main duties, it's a really funny one when people ask me that. I guess a lot of it is setting that strategy and then implementing it. When you say implementing it, that's making sure that you've got the team and money to be able to finance that, and the team and people to be able to deliver on that. So I would say that everyone I've hired is, I'd personally say, probably more intelligent and more specialized than me, and that's why I've hired them. I don't want to hire people that are less intelligent and worse than me. It's all about hiring people that inspire me to come in here every day and to grow as a person. But yeah, no, I'd definitely say that the team is a big aspect behind that. Do you have any advice for students who wish to follow a similar path to yours? It's a funny one. Again, it sort of comes back to that just do it networking, putting a deck together. What I would be more than happy to do off the back of this, if there is a group of you that are all interested in different ideas, we'll meet up or something. We can all grab a coffee, or we can do a virtual thing over Zoom because it's probably more appropriate. And we can have a separate chat, just all about tips and talk through any of your ideas and stuff. Do you have any ideas for someone who has a blueprint for a new business but doesn't know where to go from there? I think it's just building out on that blueprint. Speak to as many people as you can. If it's not like a world-changing idea that you need to protect with IP, I think my biggest advice to anyone here that's got a business they want to get the next steps or work it out, go get in touch with Mark and Kim at Launchspace. They're literally on campus. They're down at the robotics lab. Mark is still one of my advisors today. I speak to him every single week. I probably at a point where I'm just annoying him now. But you know, they've got a fantastic location down there. They've got loads of experience. There's some awesome startups still operating down there, and you'll really get a feel, I think, and a buzz for being in and around that environment. And they're certainly better coaches than I am. Did you build your business alongside your degree, or would you graduate before you started working on Bunk? So yeah, I sort of went over that one briefly, but we started it whilst at university, but properly full time as we graduated. Best way to network and interact with like-minded people. I mean, before the pandemic, much easier. There's loads of startup sort of networking events around Bristol. Get out to them, you know, at the engine sheds near Temple Meads. It's like a sort of startup hub. They've always got loads of different events on there. So I think, for instance, either tomorrow or even today, there's a startup pitching competition. So people are pitching to raise finance. It's called what's it called? Silicon Gorge. So if you look up Silicon Gorge Bristol, you should be able to find the link. And I think it's all digital to this round. So you should be able to watch all those startups. And then the people that putting that on, whether or not it's people like, you know, Bryony Phillips, who's part of that team, and at Rocket Makers, and there's a huge amount of people who are part of that Bristol ecosystem. So if you just sort of turn up some of these events, you'll meet a lot of these people that you can then sort of start, you know, I guess, pushing your ideas in front of. Biggest difficulty or obstacle you've experienced during your time setting up the business? I mean, that's a really good question. I mean, there's been a lot of really tough moments. I think probably where the toughest has been around work. You know, I would say the biggest benefit is working with friends, but the toughest has probably been a conversation I've had to have with one of my closest friends when it wasn't quite working out. And you know, having to go through that process with someone you sort of really do love and care about and's been on a journey with you was certainly the hardest thing I've done to date in the business. What's Bunk's business model? How does it make money? Good question. So ultimately, for tenants, it's completely free. You know, you can search, sign, secure, download, jump onto the platform. We don't monetize the tenant side of the business at all. For landlords, it's all about reducing their costs, right? So at the moment, a landlord, even if they want to just find tenants and they're not even using a letting agent to manage their property, is going to spend almost £1,000 just to find you to move into their property. So ultimately, we've taken that and slashed it on its head. So we charge landlords £20 a month per property. And it's all about that sort of SaaS subscription model, really adding them value so they could cancel and run away if they wanted to. But then for that, we don't just do the whole tenant find process and digitally all the contracts and deposits, but we also have a platform to help them manage it throughout the year, for instance, with the full rent collection, maintenance reporting, etc. Is Bunk for all rental properties accessible to everyone? Would you consider a student app specifically for students wishing to rent? Bunk started off as just a student app. And to be completely honest with you, I think it was when we graduated and we realized we were raising money for this and we weren't going to be able to use the app because we weren't students anymore. We were pretty fuming and worked out how to adapt it into a wider market. So yeah, there's a very big sort of student angle to Bunk. And we're sort of building those journeys at the moment so it becomes much more clearer. So if you're a student, you go through a very student path. But for instance, on all of our search functionalities, you can search whether or not you're a student or a professional. Not a question, but I just downloaded your app. Thank you. What's the thing that worried you most when you started up your own business? Oh, good question. I mean, it sounds really bad, but probably failure. I think everyone's sort of, I guess, scared to fail a little bit. And we were doing it with friends, and I'd literally told everyone I knew about it for the last 9 months beforehand that I was going to do this. So probably everyone in my whole entire network, friends and family, would have turned around and be like, "Oh, you chat a lot of crap, don't you, Tom?" So I don't know. I think the benefit is, and what I'd say is that we're all young, and I think it's the right time to be able to take these risks as well. To really throw yourself into it and learn something and really, really go on a journey. I think I've got so much respect for people that do this when they've had, you know, when they've got young kids and they're throwing away real security to go on this journey. I guess it sounds really bad, but I was lucky that I didn't have any of that security to start with. You know, I was a student pretty much living out of a car, jumping between people's sofas. So, you know, Bunk's provided me a lot of that security. What are the lessons that you've learned when creating your business? Oh God, a lot. Probably too many for me to be able to just list and go through. But you know, I wasn't a traditional, well-behaved student throughout my education. I've probably been expelled from schools when I was younger, given every other punishment under the sun. And it's not that I was a really bad kid. I was just quite cheeky and liked to muck around. I guess going on the placement year at uni really helped me. When I came back to university, I just loved learning, and I think that was the first time in my life that I actually enjoyed learning. And I was 21 going into my final year of university. So I wouldn't say you need a sort of traditional background going on this, but I've learned that with a sort of smart group of friends, you can pretty much achieve anything. I think the benefit of sort of doing the process of what we have done with Bunk and the journey we've gone on, I can now sort of dissect and look at pretty much any other business, any other market, and sort of, I guess, look to the root of the problem and how someone can solve that problem. So I guess it's quite an interesting skill to pick up across wider markets, and not just sort of the rental market. What's Bunk's business model? I've answered that one. Since you work with friends, do you have team leaders, or is it a group run organization? Good question. I wonder what the team would say on that. I mean, I would say, look, there's definitely a management team that sets direction. But I would then also say it's a group run organization. Like, anyone that's got an idea or a suggestion, they'll be heard, even if it's the best idea or the worst idea. And we encourage, it sounds weird, but I certainly would encourage failure a bit as well. If people aren't thinking outside of the box with sort of radical solutions, then they're not doing something right. And therefore, if they're doing these radical solutions, most of them aren't going to work. And therefore, it's all about sort of iterating and failing quickly when you're working on stuff, so that you can then get to the sort of, I guess, crux of the problem and get to the solution quicker. But yeah, no, I would say that there's certainly a few of us that run from a management perspective, but it's certainly an organisation that's contributed through to everyone. Yeah, you can download Bunk. Can you download Bunk on your app or phone for free, or do you have to pay for it? So Bunk at the moment is fully available on iOS. On Android, you have to go on our website, unfortunately. So if you're on Android, you can just head over to like app.rentbunk.com, and that will hit you straight onto our application as well. What do you think the single most important thing to keep in mind for year one students, university students, to guide us in the right direction? Oh God, I need to make sure I say the right thing here. Honestly, your first year of uni, I don't think it really makes a difference to your first year, third year of uni, whether or not you're 30, 40 or 10 when you're starting a business. And I think that's certainly one thing I've learned on this journey, is age doesn't really matter. I think experience of a problem really does matter. And I think, I've met a lot of people who have, aren't really looking for problems, but they've just got an idea that's a solution. This would be cool, but what's it fixing? And I think that's something to really, really bear in mind. But I think if you're first year, just enjoy uni. University is one of the best times of your life. You need to just go enjoy it and, get a nice friendship group, work hard at your degree in your final year, and make sure you sort of get through that experience. I think uni teaches you so much about yourself, and, you build up that resilience, that self-development, that ability to go in and start something. Without university and working on my degree, there's no way I would have the sort of ability to actually say, right, I'm going to go do this work and do it. I think the other thing to that is, office space has always been really important for us. Like, we know that if we didn't have a space, we're all coming in and working, and we were just sitting at sofas and on our beds trying to get things off, we wouldn't be working as hard. And by all being in that office and creating that environment, you really gain that momentum to get everything going. Would you ever consider going on Dragon's Den? Funnily enough, they actually asked us to go on Dragon's Den. It'd be interesting. I mean, we're just closing this funding round now, so it would actually be quite a good time. But if we went on Dragon's Den, we would go on there asking for more money than most people have ever asked them for, a valuation that will make all of them wince. And they'll sit there and they'll spend half an hour ripping into my business, and I'll spend half an hour telling them why they're wrong. And then if they invest off the back of it, fantastic. But then they probably wouldn't invest at our valuation, so I'd have to say no to them anyway. So it'd be an awesome experience, and it's certainly something that might pop back up. But generally, we might be a bit too far down the line now. What's that one? How did you get a mentor? I mean, funnily enough, again, through networking. It was through, I think it was actually, I went back in the summer and did some work for my old school, one of those classic calling up people on the phones and asking them to donate, and then ended up talking to the lady who was running that, camp, basically, at work during the summer. And she was saying, oh, well, if you've got an idea, you should speak to this person because he likes, he's an entrepreneur himself and likes looking at ideas. So she ended up putting me in touch, and he sort of mentored me through people in and around Bristol that are always more than happy to give you some time and talk through and give you some sort of mentorship to go on that. Or like I was saying, LinkedIn is literally one of the best resources. Like, I've raised money off people cold off LinkedIn. I've closed deals off LinkedIn. We've met new people. We've hired people off LinkedIn. Like, it's a social media that can get you in front of everyone from a professional side of your life and not just the sort of social side of things. In a couple of years' time, if Bunk becomes a self-sustained business, do you think you'd move on to something else? Really good question. I mean, so I guess there's two ways for answering that. I never want to stop doing Bunk. I love Bunk, and it's almost like my baby, and I want to grow it into, I want it to be a global organisation, not just the largest in the UK, but the go-to app for long-term renting across the world. And that's not going to be a short-term journey. But assume I was already in that position. Yeah, of course I would. I didn't grow up as a kid dreaming about the long-term rental sector. I've got various other dreams and aspirations. I guess I just experienced a real problem. But yeah, I mean, certainly in sort of 5-10 years time, if Bunk's doing incredibly well, I'd love to have my fingers in a few different pies, whether or not that's investing or advising and helping other business get off the ground, or having another 2 or 3 myself. I generally love that whole process of starting up, looking at markets, and really trying to build a solution to a problem. I wouldn't start a business, but I don't know where to start. Any advice? I mean, I've probably covered that a few times. Get that idea down on paper, get it in front of people, get people critiquing it. It's a hard one because depending on your idea, you want to talk to the person you'd be selling to, right? So if it's a consumer-based app that all of your friends are going to end up using, if they like it, then go sit down with them, work out is it something they'd actually use. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes consumers don't know what they want. So there's a lot of studies out there to show. I mean, for instance, Apple, when they released the iPhone, people weren't out there saying we want this touchscreen device to be able to do everything on, but they knew that they were going to lead a transformation across the sector. So take what they say with a pinch of salt, but you'll certainly be able to get to the crux and work out if there's a real problem there to be solved. Amazing idea, very inspiring. Congrats, mate. It's that video you showed us online. It's not actually online. It's on a private hidden account at the moment. But again, if any of you want access to it or want it, then connect with me on LinkedIn and I can send you a link.
And I think that's all we have time for. So Tom, thank you so much. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit echo for myself, but that's absolutely inspiring. And anyone who's listening, I put a link over in the Q&A. Our innovation and enterprise can help if you want to start a business. When Tom's talking about launch space, we have a launch space version for current students as well, where you can get co-working arrangements and advice. So I recommend you go have a look at that website. And I just wanted to thank Tom so much from the university for coming in and telling us his inspiring story. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much. Cheers, everyone. Thank you.